so excited to be launching this podcast today. Even more excited to have a good friend of mine, Craig Civil, join us for this very, very first podcast. Craig, welcome. Thank you for being on this podcast, and I wonder if you can introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Waseem. Yeah, what an honour to be on the first inaugural podcast from Rockborne. So, hi, I'm Craig Civil. I'm the Director of Data Science and AI at the British Standards Institution, but that's the last time I'll refer to the British Standards Institution, now referred to as BSI.
Fantastic, Craig. And Craig, we've known each other for years, and you've had well, too many years, maybe you'd say, but you've had a long career in data. I wonder if you can give our listeners a bit of a brief background on yourself as to how you ended up at BSI, and how you ended up doing all things to do with data science and AI now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it has been a long career, hasn't it?
I've still got my hair.
Just give it a few more years, Waseem.
Yeah.
Especially in that chief exec's chair. Mind you, with all those people working around you, I think you'll be all right. So yeah, well, first job really out of university. I did a social science degree, geography and economics, and that got me into statistics using a pretty basic kind of MATLAB computer at the time. I think doing all the chi-squared kind of calculations for my geography degree, and that's what started me off essentially in this world of data and data analysis. And I got my first job working in the National Health Service over in Norfolk, where I now reside, although I'm just over the border in Suffolk. And that was in the days when kind of information being published and shared with the public. There was a big push from the government at the time to get information that was kind of in big, thick books in libraries. So if I wanted to find out where, my local GP or my local dentist, when they were open, what services they offered, it was in a big, thick printed book that sat on a shelf in the library. And there was a big push at the time to kind of take all of that data from the printed piece of paper into a system, into a computer system. And that was my job, essentially, kind of transcribing all of this information into a computer system. It was a system called Data Ease. I don't know if anybody listeners will remember that. It was kind of a bit like the early days of Microsoft Access. And long story short, we created the database, and we moved to the stage of being able to keep that updated on a regular basis by the doctors, the dentists, the pharmacists, and the opticians providing that information. And then there was an office full of people that would update the data in this Data Ease database to keep the thing up to date. And then from there, kind of, that just got me into computers. I then moved on to kind of geographical information systems, kind of when they were kind of the panacea of, not only could we print this thing now and store it in a database, but we could show on a map where all these surgeries were, and oh gosh, we can then start to do travel distance time and see where all the patients are coming from, and kind of where the spread is and how long it takes, etc. And then Waseem, basically I kind of moved up through the ranks of I did my Sybase DBA, got the stripes, and the badge to kind of managing informations teams through the health service. And I spent 15 years. I really enjoyed my time there. 15 years in NHS. But then I kind of felt like I'd done all I could do for the NHS, and it's quite a political animal, and kind of, governments come in, things change. So I was working with a startup organisation at the time, a company called Health Dialogue. And they said, Craig, how about you come and work with us? And I thought, so who's working for you at the moment? Well, nobody at the moment. So how about you kind of come and join us and open the office in Cambridge, but just me? Yeah, we'll probably get somebody else to help you. Pretty scary proposition, leaving the safety public service, 15 years, but it was also quite exciting. here was the opportunity to try something brand new, but use all the experience I'd gained over those 15 years to see if we could get a startup organisation off the ground in the UK. It was pretty big over in the US, but they wanted to bring the model over to the UK. So I did it. I took that leap of faith and joined the startup organisation that was Health Dialogue. I opened a small office in Cambridge, and our claim to fame was that in the very next door office to us down the corridor was a company called Spotify. Spotify were just starting out. God, if only I'd known at the time. And you know, a similar thing then emerged. We started to get traction. We got some customers. Obviously, it was very different. Startup, public and private sector. Jack of all trades, you know, servers on the floor, taking calls from clients, doing some finance, until we got a momentum behind us that we can then start to employ people that kind of really knew all that stuff properly. And, you know, really enjoyable time, everybody working together to get this organisation going. And then Health Dialogue got bought by Bupa. Bupa moved me into the world of insurance, and from Bupa and insurance, I could tell a similar kind of tale. Again, a kind of about evangelizing about data, an organization that was recognizing the value of data and wanted to transform. Was there for 5 years, kind of did my thing there again. Then an opportunity emerged at Lloyd's Insurance, completely different marketplace, related to insurance. Fantastic place, Lloyd's, brilliant building, you know, lots of history, great super brand to work for, and moved into a team just before you joined, Waseem. Helen Crooks, Chief Data Officer. Helen had a brilliant mission for what she wanted to drive data forward at Lloyd's, was building the team. So I was involved in the very early stages of building that data capability for Lloyd's. And it was just, and kind of as I'm talking through here, I'm kind of going, yeah, there's a bit of a theme here. 5 years, kind of done what I needed to do at Lloyd's. So time to move on, looking around, got approached about BSI, and here I am now. So I'm the Director of Data Science and AI, Artificial Intelligence, in an innovation team. And it's all about helping the organisation, the great brand that is BSI, that we probably all come across, you know, particularly in the UK, transform itself into a digitally enabled, data-driven organisation. So it's been a good 18 months here so far.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's quite interesting because we've known each other for a few years, but I haven't heard your complete story, and we've got very, very similar backgrounds, right? So my career also started off in the NHS, and then went into startup land, and then went into corporate. So it's a very, very similar background. So maybe I'm following you or copying you in some way, Craig, in terms of your background. What's really interesting is at every point in your journey, you actually spoke about value of data. And that's a theme of today's talk, really. We as you know, because you contributed to it, we recently launched a paper around quantifying the benefit of data. And that's all about value creation. And we got so many perspectives in the paper, and for our listeners, we'll include a link to the paper in the description of this podcast as well. But I'd love to get your take on it, Craig, because actually there's an easy way of doing it, which we'll cover. I say there's an easy way, but it's sometimes more trickier. But in your world, it's actually quite hard to quantify the benefit of data and the activities you're doing, because often when you start off in an organization, as you have been doing in 5-year stints, it's about proving the value, and it's about testing certain innovations and failing a lot of times before you actually succeed. So I'd love to get your take on what is quantifying the benefit of data mean to you, and how do you adopt it?
Yeah, it is a tricky topic, and kind of if you reflect, and if I look back at kind of how you make your mark and how you show the value of kind of the role that you do in the team that you're building, and kind of the data that you're capturing and what it brings to the organization. it's not a one size fits all, and I know there's not a one metric that says that you can measure the value of data. So examples, right? So early stage career, this idea of moving data from paper into digital, so that you could then provide more of an interactive service for the local population. There was quantifiable savings that you could actually measure from that piece of, you no longer had to print thousands of pages and get them bound and send them to Jarrell's, the local printers, right? You could immediately chop all of that. So there's a nugget of saving. But then you've got the associated costs with moving it into the database, which you could argue you could put some value on license costs, etc. But then the bit that's really tricky is, how do you measure the value of what you're really doing the job for, which is, in that case, the local population have got are much better informed, or at least you're enabling them to be better informed. That's a really hard job to do. And then fast forward kind of 25 years or so, crikey, innovation. And how do you measure innovation? And there's kind of going to say like a leap of faith in the people that you are working for, working with. You've got the evidence of the work that's gone on before in previous organizations, in previous roles, use cases. But really, when you're in innovation, data science, and like artificial intelligence now, it's really hard to measure the value of the investment, and they're very, very expensive, some of these investments, because you often don't get the benefit, kind of 3, 4, 5 years out. So you kind of have to make the case, you have to paint the vision, you have to show experience, you have to, I think you have to do a lot of communication. Communication is a really important role. You have to bring people with you. You have to tell the stories in a really engaging, and I'm going to use that word again, kind of evangelistic way, so that people are willing to invest in you and your team, so that you can then kind of 3, 4, 5 years out develop products off the back of this investment that the organization has made. So yeah, it's a tricky job to do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm going to pick up on a couple of points actually. The first point is around, actually, in a market like this, it is a tough market at the moment. Often budgets are scrutinized in organizations, right? And actually budgets are scrutinized to every teams. It's all across the patch. But in an area like yours, everyone knows data is super important. Everyone knows the value of data. Well, I hope they do, but certain organizations are perhaps earlier in their journey. How do you justify actually the work you're doing in a time where budgets are being scrutinized, and how do you actually how can you justify that against some of the mandatory roles an organization would need around data protection and governance and all of that kind of stuff? And there's going to be a follow-on question for this, but I'd love to get your view on it, because actually what you're saying effectively as a leader in this role is actually, it's a bit of a gamble, but you're gambling on me and my experience to show that this will work, but I've got nothing to show you in evidence at this point in time.
So, I mean, it varies, right? So my team often laugh at me when I say kind of it always boils down to the data that the organization is capturing. Kind of whichever problem you're looking to solve, pretty much, kind of from a business commercial perspective, you can probably trace the route all the way down to some data that's being collected somewhere. And I've come through various roles within organizations, from being the guy that coded stuff and produced some reports, to managing departments, to now kind of doing the innovations side of things. But I'm very pleased that I went along that route. I'd like to say it was planned, but it wasn't. It was kind of more by accident that I kind of went through these different roles. But that's very, very important, because, and I'll give you an example right now, and it comes back to kind of the value of data, right? So, large investment program to improve the way that data is captured and analysed at the organisation. Data science is often seen as kind of the more kind of shiny, glossy area of
in some cases, the nice to have, right? Yeah.
It's kind of the end result, data scientists, etc. But actually, the data science capability and the work that we can do as a team is limited by our access to data. So I can show that, for example, I could show that I can't do this use case that the department head thinks is a very good use case, because customers will love it, improve retention, etc. But I can't deliver it for you because the data that's being captured in the organisation either isn't there, or most likely it's there, but it's not quite of the quality that we expect and need to produce robust analytics that you then want to put in front of your customers. But it's not a case of just going, bye, sorry, I'll move on to the next one now, and I'll kind of leave you kind of drying out your tears. I can say, but we might be able to work on this one. We might be able to do it in this particular way. It's probably not the panacea that you want, but we can at least make progress. Now, how about I then help you make the case to say, well, to reach the ultimate, this is what you need to do to improve your data collection. These are the processes you need to improve. These are perhaps the people that you need to employ in your team. Invest now, and then kind of 18 months, 2 years time, you will be able to get that product that you really want to do, because you know from focus groups that that's actually what the customers want. So, kind of that circular loop and helping the business understand the relationships that exist has been really important. Collaboration is absolutely key. Collaboration and communication. You have to do that. You have to get the business people on your side and working with you, and actively wanting to work with you. You want them knocking on your door saying, I need a piece of your data team to help me deliver this product or service going forward. Rather than being seen as kind of a team of very smart people, but they kind of do weird and wacky things, and I haven't actually seen much.
Sit in a dark room and
kind of head down in front of my laptop here, just kind of doing some magic code and producing no doubt some brilliant things, but maybe not of particular value. So yeah, absolutely, and I see that as a key part of my role to do, and then that enables the really talented people in my team that I recruited, my data scientists, to do the head down coding work that that the businesses employed them to do, and which they're very, very smart and capable of doing. That's my job as a data leader, to join all of those bits together. Yeah,
I think we're completely aligned in that, and I think genuinely, I've had the pleasure of working with you for a few years. You're one of the best at bringing people on board that I've seen, anyway. And there was a lot that I could learn from you in terms of actually how do you bring multiple people from multiple different organizations together. So lots that actually I think a lot of people listening could learn from you. I guess in that journey as well, you'll no doubt face challenges. I mean, you spoke about one of them in terms of the data and the quality of the data as well. But what would you say especially new into, you're 18 months in now, but kind of your first 6 months in at BSI, what were your biggest barriers, or what were your biggest challenges in order to win people over and bring the business on board with you? What would you say your, I don't know, one or two biggest challenges were?
It was and this is not unique to kind of the role that I've got now. It's happened in each of the kind of roles that I've moved into. It's been building that confidence and trust with the talented people that are already in the organization doing a really good job, and getting them to be confident and trust me, to want to come, and it comes back to that kind of wanting to work with me, and ultimately, kind of 6 months down the road with my team. So it's a very gently working with these people to listen to them, take on board what they are saying, to politely debate, just test out, and then ultimately to kind of start to deliver new things for them that are based off data, that improves the way that they can do their jobs, or improves the way that they can interact with their customers.
I think there's a couple of aspects to this, right? And I think you do this very well. So I'm going to ask this question. Like, I think a big part of the white paper and some of the talks that I've been doing recently as well is kind of helping data leaders to understand that actually your role is moving away from being a practitioner in the space, to actually being a data salesperson in the organization. And every attribute that you've just spoken about, working with the business, showing the value, is a sales job in its entirety. You need to know its time. You need to know your domain, which is data, which you do. But it's very, very important to sell that value into the organization, especially in a field like yours. I mean, would you agree? Would you disagree? Your thoughts on that, really?
That's kind of been the biggest challenge, because it's only once you've got their trust, that they come knocking on your door and kind of want to work with you. And kind of when you're in, like with Lloyd's, a highly regulated industry, and BSI is, although it's not quite so strictly regulated, it's got the Royal Charter, which it takes quite rightly very, very seriously, and is very proud of that. But there are requirements that go with having that Royal Charter and maintaining that Royal Charter. And so people are naturally kind of, who's this guy coming in? We can do this now. Are you absolutely sure that's going to be okay? So it's working with people, and at the sake of repeating myself, that trust piece.
There's certainly a theme, right, in terms of the way, like, I feel like you might end up doing this when you finally decide, years and years to come, when you decide to write a book around your playbook. I think there's going to be a theme around collaboration, trust, selling, winning people over, and that's coming out kind of loud and clear. I'm going to read a quote from you, actually, from the white paper that you contributed to, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and I wonder if you could just kind of elaborate to it. You spoke about, for your first data project, identify some opportunities where you have the biggest chance of success, and go for the ones to establish a clear value add early on. This will give you credibility to fall back on down the line. So effectively go after the low-hanging fruit, if I can paraphrase a little bit on that side. Do you think that's key?
Yeah. What it's already kind of stressful enough, kind of coming into a brand new team, brand new role, brand new organization, kind of needing to work with people, build up that positive reputation, build up that trust. Yeah, why give yourself a really, really nutty, tricky job as your first one? My experience is that if you have those early conversations and you build that rapport with people, and people start to open up to you, there are some, in those early days, there's some opportunities that you'll kind of twig and go, gosh, we've done that one before. I think we could fire up something pretty damn quick for you to help you out. Or, wow, that example there, I know a company that I've worked with in the past that were really, really good, that could probably help us fire up some examples pretty quick. So yeah, I think so, because those early doors successes then give you a little bit more leeway when you start to get those, those bigger, more expensive projects that will come to you because you've had successes early on.
Build your credibility as well.
Yeah, you then got a lot more leeway when you start to say, well, this one, not sure this is going to work, and these are the reasons why.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely key to success. Yeah.
And what would you say? Because obviously you've got a career of, I think you said 25 years or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's about that. Yeah. I mean, I'm only 26, so you probably started when I was 1. What? Yeah. No, I wish. What would you say your biggest success is then, in terms of a project that you've been involved in, and how do you measure that success? In the spirit of quantifying, how do you measure that success, and why do you think it is a success?
I suppose I could answer that in 2 ways, right? Biggest success, that I really, not only was it a success, but I really enjoyed it as well, and kind of I genuinely think helped people improve. Like, I mean, the example is when I was working in the healthcare environment, we did some work at Health Dialogue with the King's Fund, which is a respected kind of think tank, if that's the right word. Sorry if there's any King's Fund people listening, but it was pretty groundbreaking at the time, because it was us, Health Dialogue, working with the King's Fund, commissioned by the UK government, and it was creating an algorithm, a risk stratification algorithm, whereby we were collecting lots of bits of data, anonymized healthcare data about patients, where they're given consent to share their information. That's a story in itself about that journey of getting that consent piece. With supply data, kind of how many hospital beds, where these hospitals are located, etc. So, supply and demand data, gather it, curate it, and then, so we're talking 14 years ago. So this is pre kind of any fancy Databricks-y, data robot, data IQ, other suppliers are out there, kind of software, right? So it's pretty hardcore stuff. All this data coming in, gather it, curate it, write the code, write the models, do the beta weights, and then risk stratify all of these patients. And we came up with our risk pyramid, where all the data, every single line of data which related to a patient had a risk factor associated with it. And you could then, people at the top of the pyramid, they were quite poorly, unfortunately. People down the base of the pyramid, they were the healthier part of the population. And what you wanted to do was stop the currently healthy people kind of moving up the pyramid. And we therefore used this algorithm. It was called the Combined Predictive Risk Model, to provide recommendations to the surgeries about healthcare professionals that we recommend, or the data is saying, you could intervene with these patients to keep them healthy and stop them getting sicker. And that was a rewarding experience, both from a purely, wow, this data stuff and stats is really fantastic, to kind of going to the surgeries and presenting the results. And I think we did hear stories about from nurses about how they've been intervening with people. So that's my proudest successful moment, I think.
That's fascinating, right? So you're kind of moving away from what would be the reactive investigation type stuff. Oh no, this happened. Why did it happen? To proactively intervening. And when you kind of step back and make it into healthcare, it stops someone from potentially having really, really serious illnesses, which makes it better quality of life for the individual, but also better for I guess the NHS altogether and the healthcare system altogether in terms of cost. Absolutely fascinating.
And actually, being able to measure the value of that, we could. we could, because we had to prove the ROI on that one. But that as I say, for a variety of reasons, that's kind of one of my proudest success stories. And then where I am now at BSI, I'm really enjoying this role. I'm working with a fantastic team of people across the organisation. They've all, welcomed me with open arms, and we've got some really good use cases in progress right now. And I think we're going to come up with some pretty cool stuff for BSI and kind of transform the way it's working. So kind of I would say my success stories are still to come.
Fantastic. Oh gosh, and what a note to potentially end on. Oh, look at that. And you know what? I'll invite you again in 12 months if we make something of this podcast to talk about some of those successes. What I'd like to do, Craig, actually, as we come towards the end of this podcast, time always flies when I talk to you, and I thoroughly enjoy talking to you each time. But one of the things I wanted to end the podcast on is one tip that you would give to a future data leader or someone coming into a data leadership type space, and one thing that you still want to learn, because I believe, and I know you do as well, that we're forever kind of learners, and we're always learning new things. So someone in your position, senior data leader, what's the one thing that you still feel like you want to pick up? So one tip, one thing you want to pick up.
Okay. Well, so my one tip would be, so for somebody kind of like moving up through the ranks, I defer back to my collaborate, communicate, and build that trust, and don't be too impatient to kind of want to make that success. Just bide your time. It will come, and you will look back and go, phew, I'm glad I kind of waited a little bit before I made too much of a song and a dance about that. So that would be my tip. And then kind of what do I want to do next? I think, look, there's a lot of noise going on around globally at the moment about this thing that is ChatGPT, right? And it has naturally created a lot of understandable interest at the organisation. And I think it's kind of, again, I think it's going to come down to that trust thing again. It's having the leaders right at the top of the organisation. I'm talking execs, board, that are kind of being bombarded with all of these messages going, ChatGPT is the latest and greatest, and it's going to change everything. And I'm kind of deferring down the line a little bit and kind of going, Craig, what do you think? What do your team think? What's the reality on the ground? And kind of just pause, just take a breath, and kind of listen to what the people that have been doing this for a little while have got to say. And so that's kind of my mission right now, actually, to achieve that.
Fantastic. Look, we're fast out of time, and Craig, I'm so appreciative to you that you came on our very, very first podcast. Hopefully there'll be loads more. We'll be inviting you back. I mean, there's so many topics that we can talk about. ChatGPT. We can also talk about the AI regulation that's been talked about a lot as well. And I know you're big on AI ethics and actually putting some regulation about. There's so many topics, and we could talk for hours, but. Thank you so much for your time, and for the listeners, stay tuned for more sessions and more insightful conversations with data leaders as well. Thanks so much, Craig.
Yeah, no, thanks, Waseem. Enjoyed it. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode, brought to you by the Harnham Group. We'd love it if you would share the podcast on social media and leave a comment or a review to help us reach a bigger audience. If your company is having difficulty finding skilled data professionals, you can rely on the global leader in data and analytics recruitment, staffing and talent development to assist you with your hiring needs. Find out more at www.harnham.com. Thank you for listening.